Welcome back, everybody, to the Kings of the Queen City podcast. I am Matt, joined by Zach again. It's our favorite time of the year, everybody. It was like Christmas Eve on Saturday night. The NFL is back, and we are covering Week 1 extensively. And as you both know, we are Bills fans, so our season kicked off on Thursday Night Football, national TV. We'll cover that game a little bit, but I just want to warn everybody now. I'm assuming a lot of you followers watch the NFL. If you don't, the keyword for the NFL this week: sloppy, sloppy, sloppy. It was a rough week 1 across the league. I think Zach would agree with that. So Zach, get your thoughts on week 1 real quick across the league, and then we'll jump into the first game when you're ready.
All right. Well, as you're aware, we're all in that group chat for fantasy, and I'm sure you saw my text. This is probably the craziest week 1 I've ever fully been a part of. I mean, I watched football somewhat as a kid. I more so watched hockey with my dad, and I didn't really get into football until I was, old enough to understand like what it meant to root for a home team, all that stuff. But I mean, out of all the ones I've been a part of, there were so many games that were decided or even undecided by the tie we saw. So many games came down to the fourth quarter, and it was the second half of the fourth quarter. There really were only a few blowouts with a lot of games coming close and a lot of teams that we maybe expected going into the season to be bad performed pretty well, even if they did lose, and then vice versa with teams that we were, expect them to pick up right where they left off, and that just didn't seem to be the case. So, all in all, I would agree it was a very sloppy week 1. Injuries, those are always going to come week 1. Players still getting back into full fitness and all that. But other than that, lots of enjoyable football to watch. We're actually recording this on a Monday. Monday Night Football between the Seahawks and Broncos is actually kicking off in about a half an hour. I think the pregame show will probably be starting right around now, but that'll be kicking off. So we're hoping to get this episode done before then. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts, and let's jump into it, Matt.
All right, yeah, like I said, everybody, Thursday Night Football obviously kicking off the season. This week, we talked about expectations and how crazy week 1 has affected those expectations. Well, this one has had a lot of expectations on it for months. You have the defending Super Bowl champions, the LA Rams, going up against the expected Super Bowl favorites from the AFC, the Buffalo Bills. And our team went into LA, and well, I guess the best way to put it would be they took care of business. I wasn't overly impressed with this game. A lot of people, especially in the national media and people who run shows obviously that are much bigger than ours, talked about the Bills all week, and they talked about how it was a dominating performance. And while I can agree with you that the defensive line was definitely dominating for the Buffalo Bills in this game, I think everything else kind of stumbled a little bit, if you will. Halftime it was 10-10. And it's a game that could have gone either way. The big takeaways, like I said, the D-line for Buffalo is very good. The Rams kind of shocked me. Everybody knows that Cooper Kupp is their number 1 guy, and he's one of the best receivers in the game. But for some reason, hardly any targets. I don't even know if he had one for Allen Robinson. Van Jefferson wasn't really used. The tight ends were widely underused in this game, and the running backs really didn't get going. So, and Stafford looked about as bad as he's looked in a Rams uniform, I would say. But here we go again with the word sloppy. Buffalo had 4 turnovers. The Rams had at least 3 turnovers in this game. And just to give you guys the stat lines real quick, we have them on all our quarterbacks this week. We like to keep up on it. Allen was productive at 26 of 31, 297 yards, 3 touchdowns, but the 2 picks, one of which wasn't his fault, but still counts. And then Stafford was 29 of 41 with 240 yards, 1 touchdown with 3 picks. So obviously a much worse stat line for Stafford. But Zach, what are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, so I mean, first to touch up on the receiving target share for the Rams, it was abysmal. I get Cooper Kupp is your best guy. Van Jefferson is actually, I believe he's still out with doing rehab on his knee. I think he had an ACL issue last season, so he's still rehabbing from that. But Tyler Higbee, in my opinion, is right around that top 10, top 15 tight end mark in the league. You need to use him more. I understand Matt Milano's a good coverage linebacker, so in those any off chances where you might have run a 5 receiver set or 4 and a tight end, he's got someone that could most likely match him on the other side. But you need to be getting Tyler Higbee the ball more. And then on your point with Allen Robinson, you brought him in basically as an Odell replacement because you knew you probably weren't going to re-sign Odell. And he had 1 catch for 12 yards. And I still think Allen Robinson's a good receiver. You have not heard about him at all since he joined the Bears because the Bears have been atrocious in the time he was there. But he's still a very serviceable receiver. And a lot of what I've been seeing in, like social media and all that stuff is a lot of the Rams players on offense, I get they were being controlled every which way by the Bills defense. But the Rams offense still should be good enough to where they can put up a performance that doesn't look like they were scrambling the whole time. Stafford did not look like himself after the first quarter. And besides when we went into halftime, I remember seeing the score and I was shocked that it was 10-10 because we were all over them. And so when I saw that scoreline, that was the only time that I was surprised how close it was. Other than that, I personally didn't really have any issues with how the Bills played other than their pass pro could have been better. I mean, like you said, the D-line played amazing. And that's what we're going to need with this 4-3 system we play in. But I get it. Trey White's still out. Benford looked very good for being a late round pick. It's way too early to start up the hype train and tell it to leave the station, but
right.
He did look very very good in coverage when he played. But yeah, other than that, I really didn't see any concern once we saw how they started playing right out the gate. Like you said, the interceptions. One wasn't his fault, still counts though, still had the interceptions, led to us going into halftime tied. But I was very pleased with how they played. I did not at all, right after halftime when we got our first score, at that point I was like, okay, we've got this game in control and we're only a score up.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And the good thing, too, coming out of this game for the Bills to kind of back up their Super Bowl expectations, Allen was efficient. I did mention the interceptions, but his numbers were efficient. It wasn't his best passing game, but it definitely wasn't even close to his worst passing game. And they really didn't even have to use Dawson Knox in the receiving game. Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs were extremely effective. The only question marks they kind of might have coming in next week would be who's going to play slot more because it's obviously going to be a battle between Crowder and McKenzie, but that's something to figure out next week. So on to Sunday. Finally hitting opening day in the NFL. First game that we're going to cover that kicked off the season, which was a crazy game. Steelers playing the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. I don't know if the expectations were as high on the Bengals coming in, even though they were a Super Bowl team last year. But, man, this was brutal on both sides of the football. They talked about it right on the air. They said whoever wins this game, I don't know how happy you can be with that win. Obviously, being 1-0 starting the season is good, but it was a ugly, ugly win at that. This went to overtime. I thought it was going to end in a tie. Big takeaways I have, this just was a wild game all around. It was a bad day to be a kicker if you were playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Cincinnati Bengals. Jamar Chase was absolutely carrying the Cincinnati Bengals yet again. And Joey B, he had a lot of yards. His stats on the day were 33 of 53, so not really efficient, but he was passing a lot. He did have over 300 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, but 4 picks. I understand the Steelers' D is very good. They're probably, I think Zach would agree, at least top 5, if not top 3 in the league. Mm-hmm. But for a guy that was just about to be in the Super Bowl, to throw 4 picks in the opening week is not a good look at all. And then Mitchell Trubisky, who came in as the Steelers starter with 21 of 38 with 194 and 1 touchdown. So not a bad day for Mitchell Trubisky if you think about it. And Zach, will attest to it. I'm a big Mitchell Trubisky fan. I do not like Mitch Trubisky slander, but a lot of people don't like him. But Zach, your thoughts on this game?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. The whole time I was following the game, I was like, please do not get upset right now, because as soon as I saw, I mean, I like you said, I would agree that the Bengals did not have very high expectations, because you can even, I think even after last season, a lot of their fans admitted they were happy to make the playoffs. So when they made the Super Bowl, they were just all like, wow, we couldn't have asked for this. We're just happy we got it. And so in my eyes, it wasn't as bad, but it was still going to be like if the Bengals lose, it's like still a slight upset in my opinion. And after I saw that Joey Burrow already had 3 turnovers, I was like, what the hell's going on in this game, especially since the Steelers aren't even up by that much anymore. And I ended up turning it on halfway through the fourth to watch that stupid ending. And I was just thinking, like, how has this game come to this? I would have expected at least one side to have been more sound by the end of the game. Um, I mean, I really don't have much to say about it other than, like, this was just a bad game of football.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And you know what? The Steelers were celebrating in the locker room afterward, and I think that there's really nothing to celebrate. You won in overtime off of some fluke kicks that happened, but your defense ended up getting 5 turnovers in that game, and you still only won by 3 points. That's not good. The offense has got to be more productive in what they do. And obviously, you're not going to be great with Mitchell Trubisky, but I thought that Trubisky should have been much better than he was.
Yeah. Additionally, too, to go along with that comment, you can be happy to celebrate the game, but you shouldn't be happy to celebrate the performance you just had. And going along with that performance, with the injuries to the Steelers side, TJ Watt still not confirmed if he's going to need surgery on what is most likely at least a partially torn pectoral muscle. So he's getting more opinions tomorrow. I read a report on whether he's going to actually need surgery for that. If it is a partial tear and surgery isn't needed, he could be back in up to 6 weeks. And then I'm assuming if that injury is to the most severe extent, then he's likely out the season. But that's going to be a big loss for them on the end. Watt and Cameron Hayward, when on the defensive line together, are amazing. You can't double team 2 guys that it's just going to allocate too many resources and you're going to be left so thin on the O-line. So one of them's almost always getting single coverage, single blocking. So he's going to be missed on the side. I mean, Alex Highsmith is a decent end, so he'll have to step it up a little bit. Cameron Hayward's just going to keep doing what he's doing. Minkah Fitzpatrick in the secondary, you could almost argue single-handedly won them that game. He almost single-handedly won the game for him, and they still almost threw it away by missing the field goal.
Yeah.
So, if I had to name him as my AFC winner and a thing we're going to do later, then I would have, but I picked somebody else. But, yeah, I mean, all in all, that is just a very bad game, and I'm sure both coaches and their personnel are going to have a lot to say in watching the film today and tomorrow and throughout the week.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And one other thing we should mention about that game, key injury on the Bengals too. T. Higgins was out with a concussion, so that's going to make the what was ranked the best wide receiver room in the NFL a little bit thinner. Most likely have to miss the next week at least, if not more.
Yeah, just a couple other injuries too. Najee Harris, he has some sort of foot issue. Probably not going to be that big of a deal as long. There's a chance he could sit out for next week's game, because I know a lot of owners and coaches might be a little bit more cautious now with one more game added to the season. Maybe give that guy that extra few days to rest up. So I would assume he's probably listed as questionable right now for next week, but will probably play. And then there were also injuries to their center, which is an O-line that's already not that good. So they're likely going to miss him a little bit. And then Levi Wallace also apparently suffered an ankle injury. But I mean, their secondary is serviceable, so it shouldn't be too big of an issue.
I agree, yeah. So moving on to the next game, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Washington Commanders. This game, another game that was a little sloppy. Definitely was another fourth quarter game. It's going to be a common theme this week in the NFL. Some takeaways I had, I was very happy, also upset at the same time because Jahan Dotson, who I drafted in both of my fantasy leagues, was on my bench this week. Being a rookie in the NFL, I didn't think that he would have such a great week, but he came in with 2 touchdowns and some pretty good yardage. Zach knows this. Not a lot of people maybe following the podcast know this. I'm not the biggest Carson Wentz fan, and for good reason. But you know what? In this game, I thought Carson Wentz was pretty good for his standard, at least. And then I think the bigger storyline coming out of this game is it looks like it's going to be another season of the Jaguars continuing to struggle, which obviously it's week one. It's too early to call these things. They have a new coach, new system to adjust to, all that. But I told Zach when he was drafted, I've never been a fan of Trevor Lawrence. I really didn't think the throwing was there. I never thought the athleticism was there, and it kind of showed a little bit again today. He did do decent. I'm not going to lie. He did do good, but it wasn't, to what first overall quarterback coming into is it second or third?
Second year.
Okay. Well, even so, I think that he should have made, some bigger steps in his first game back. He's got a little bit of a revamped offense. You added Christian Kirk. You've added Zay Jones. You still have Marvin Jones Jr. You've got Travis Etienne, who also looked like he is struggling a lot still. He had a couple of big drop passes today, or Sunday, sorry. But Wentz was 27-41, which is good by Wentz's standard, like I said. 313 yards, that's pretty good for Carson Wentz. 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, not a bad day. Trevor Lawrence, 24-42, not efficient, but did pass the ball a lot. 275 yards, 1 touchdown with 1 pick. Numbers could be better, like I said, especially going up against. I got to give him credit, though. Going against the Commanders' D is definitely something that's tough. They're another team that's probably a top 5 defensive unit in the NFL. And by that standard, they did play good. We'll have to see moving forward, but I thought this game was more of the, I guess I would say, like, fun games. Maybe it's because I really don't care about either team. But I think the Commanders are going to be fun to watch this year. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I do actually really like the Commanders. Their defensive line is disgusting. They got Montez Sweat, Daron Payne, and Jonathan Allen up the middle, who are 2 excellent D tackles. And then, of course, you got Chase Young on the outside. He's not playing right now because he's still rehabbing from his ACL injury, but he'll be back probably a third of the way through the season. So once they get him back, if he's healthy, then that's just going to add even more reinforcement to that D-line that gets pressure all the time. Like you said, Carson Wentz, decent stat line by his standards. All in all, I think the Commanders' passing game looked decent today. Scary Terry, he's just going to do his thing. He still looks good. Like you said, Jahan Dotson, nobody really knows what to expect for a rookie, but he did look pretty good. Looked good in the red zone. One injury, though, or actually before I get to the injury, Wentz, I know we say this every year, the one thing that's going to save him is his turnovers. Yes, he had a better touchdown to turnover ratio, which is nice. But again, you see he's always throwing, or let alone converting, a stupid turnover. Like the turnover he gave to Trayvon Walker, I think it was, he basically threw it at him. I mean, you had to have good reactions, so like good on Walker for being able to react to the ball and snag it right out of the air. But it's basically like it was just thought of that in that moment, Wentz is just going to throw it right to his hand. He literally just snagged it out of midair. So, I mean, if you can cut down on the dumb, like, stupid interceptions and turnovers, then, and if he's able to keep this passing game up, then the Commanders are going to be a good team in that not-so-good NFC East.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And, the Commanders D, I understand they're playing the Jags, but that was a great showing by the Washington D. I'm excited to see what they can do this year. They've even had some kids kind of come out of nowhere and surprise a little bit in camp and all that. So I'm really excited to watch them this year. I think they're, like I said, I think they're going to be one of the more fun teams to watch. There's no. The nice thing about the Commanders is even though they had Wentz, even though they drafted a receiver, even though the defense is building, it's more or less because of that division, but that team as well, they're not there yet, right? Wentz is kind of going to be a placeholder until they get a franchise quarterback. So there's really no implications on that team. Nobody's going to be upset if they miss the playoffs. People are going to be happy if they do make the playoffs, but they're not, they're not expected to be a tank team and they're not expected to be a Super Bowl team. So that's what makes their season fun. It's more or less just, you know what, we're going to play, we're going to see what happens. Mm-hmm. So next game we're going to cover Saints or was it at the Falcons? I believe it was, right? Or was it in New Orleans?
Let me go check.
I think it was in New Orleans.
It was in Atlanta.
Okay. So yeah, Saints taking on the Falcons in Atlanta. Closest game of the week aside from the tie. This is another game that came down to a field goal at one point. And Falcons doing their Falcons thing of choking away a game. Not good, but Mariota starting at quarterback for Atlanta. I really didn't know what to expect out of Marcus Mariota, considering he really hasn't seen much field time really ever since he left Tennessee. And he didn't do bad, I would say. There was no touchdowns on the day. He didn't have any picks. But you know what? For a guy that hasn't played much, he really didn't do bad against a good Saints defense.
I'd agree.
And Winston played well, too. He had to leave the game here and there for injury. He came back, but he had a good day. Surprisingly, no picks out of James Winston, which he's usually good for at least one pick a game.
Yeah.
But the big winner and what I'm happy about, Cordell Patterson had a great day for the Falcons. He was generating a lot of offense. Drake London looked good. I don't think Kyle Pitts really had a real big day for the Falcons, if I'm not mistaken.
I can tell you real quick. He's only 2 for 19.
Yeah, so see, it really didn't get him involved in the game, which I think if they would have, it could have been a different story.
Yeah.
But I was kind of flipping back and forth on red zone in this game, just kind of got passed over by some other games. So Winston was 23 of 34 with 269 yards, 2 touchdowns. Mariota 20 of 33, 215. Not bad for the quarterbacks. Zach, what do you got for takeaways in this game?
So like you said, both quarterbacks actually looking fairly decent, no turnovers. Alvin Kamara, very disappointing. You'd always expect him to be a factor, and the Falcons defense did an amazing job of locking him up. Only, I believe it was like 39 yards on the ground off of 9 carries, whereas his counterpart, Cordell Patterson, 22 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown, and he also had a bunch of yards receiving as well, I believe. The Saints, though, able to get it done. I know Atlanta, in typical Atlanta fashion, choking the game away, but the Saints able to rally and get it done. Michael Thomas looking good in his return. Still being that good route runner and that good red zone threat. I think he had 2 touchdowns, right? So he was looking good. And then, honestly, like you said, I didn't expect much from Mariota. He's more of like similar to the Commanders. He's kind of just a little placeholder right now, and the Falcons, I'm sure, are going to hope that a QB falls in their lap somewhere, either in the draft or via a trade opportunity. But I think both teams have some positives to take away from, considering New Orleans is finally getting a revamped team with a lot of players coming back from injury, and Atlanta finally looking like they've got a coach who is able to put some pieces together down there. I know despite the loss, they definitely threw the loss away, but I think both teams can go into week 2 looking at a lot of positives rather than a lot of negatives.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I'm kind of interested to see how well Atlanta does this season. they're a team that if you ask me for a record prediction, I don't know if I'd be able to give you a number because it's just so hard to tell. It could go really ugly, it could go good, or it could just be another mediocre miss the playoffs season.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the time, especially now since that Super Bowl loss to the Patriots, you don't really pay much attention to the Falcons, and then you look at the final standings on the last day of the regular season. You're like, wow, Atlanta got 7 wins. Like it didn't even seem like they were playing football this year. So I mean, they
Yeah,
always come out of nowhere and just they surprise you by doing better in certain situations that you really wouldn't think of.
right. And they still had a good day, missing obviously, as most of you know, one of their star receivers who has been suspended for the entire season. So I think you add him into the mix next season with Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and hopefully they keep around Cordero Patterson, maybe bring in another running back. They could be a scary looking offense. It's more or less their defense that's a little bit concerning, but um, like you said, quarterback's going to be the main mission in the offseason, I think. But speaking of quarterbacks, good storyline in this one, I guess you could say. I'm not really happy about the outcome, but Browns versus the Panthers. This is the supposed Baker Mayfield revenge game. Many of you know, I talked about it before. I was really hoping that Baker Mayfield was going to come out and just crush the Browns, and it didn't happen. It was a close game. It came down to the final minutes. Another game, similar fashion. But Jacoby Brissett versus Mayfield. Brissett not looking bad, obviously playing for the suspended Deshaun Watson. That's one of the reasons I wanted the Browns to lose. Not Brissett, but Deshaun Watson. Many of you know I'm just disgusted with the whole Deshaun Watson situation, but and the fact that they did what they did to Baker Mayfield. But um, I think that Robbie Anderson might be in line for a bounce back year this year. DJ Moore was not impressive in this game. It could have been, he was just getting locked up by Denzel Ward. Um, I don't really know what the answer is, but Anderson had himself a good day. He really, actually, when you think about it, he really wasn't having a good day until he had the 75-yard touchdown from Baker Mayfield, which, by the way, was a great throw. It was a bullet. Um, but Christian McCaffrey got himself involved a little bit. He had a touchdown. It was his first touchdown in a while. Um, I think people kind of overlook the Panthers a little bit. And I'm not overlooking the Panthers at all. I think they have a good enough defense to match up against most NFL teams. Baker Mayfield's not as bad as people think. Um, if Robbie Anderson does have a bounce back year, like I said, that changes a lot because then you have a good 1-2 receiver. But a lot of it hinges on the same thing that it's been hinging on for years in Carolina, and that's if Christian McCaffrey can stay healthy. With McCaffrey healthy, he's a game changer. With him out, that puts the Panthers in a tight spot because you'll lose out on a little bit of that running game. But not just the running game, Christian McCaffrey is a great receiving back. So it definitely tightens up on Mayfield if he loses him. But, Zach, what do you think?
So yeah, so I actually had been picking the Panthers all week, and then I had a good old little come to Jesus meeting with myself and realized what the hell's wrong with me? The Browns team is still better than the Panthers, and despite all the percentages and the stat casting and all that bullshit, I'm not using my brain here, and so I switched back to the Browns in my pick'em league, and I was like, I need to go with the Browns here. The Browns have a better team, and what do you know? They ended up winning barely. Baker did
Right.
help the Panthers rally in the fourth quarter. Ended up losing with literal seconds left by what was an outstanding day by the Browns rookie kicker, Cade York. He looked fantastic. He couldn't have missed
Yeah.
something if he tried yesterday, I think. Um, but like you said, a big if that basically allows the Panther season to tilt one way or another is if McCaffrey stays healthy. Had an all right day yesterday, 33 yards rushing with another 24 yards in the air. So, like you said, he is that dual threat running back. We know that in the time that he has played in the league. Um, Robbie Anderson definitely can be a threat to look out for. You saw when Mayfield made that deep throw to him yesterday, he was so far behind those two safeties. Nobody was going to catch him. He could have been a lineman that made that catch. He still would have been able to run across the line without someone catching him. He was so far open. I don't know if it was a blown coverage or just a well-run route by one of the fastest guys in the league, but that was looking like a nice deep connection. But one of the main reasons that I did switch back to the Browns is, one, because Jacoby Brissett is and has proven that he is a serviceable backup quarterback, arguably top 3 backups in the league, I think. And then on top of that, the Browns have arguably the best backfield in the NFL with their 1-2 punch in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And Kareem Hunt is like a budget version in a way of McCaffrey. He can catch pretty well and run with the ball, as well as just straight up run it on the ground. And we know Nick Chubb is just a bruiser back that never goes down on the first hit. So it was basically just a matter of, was Carolina's defense going to be able to stop the Browns? And they did for the most part in the second half, just 1 times too little, and they ended up losing them on the day. But all in all, this was definitely one of the better games, even right up to the build-up with the storylines and all that. One of the games that ended in the last seconds on a good note, not on a bad note. So I was just excited to see how these two teams were going to come out. And I was happy. I personally am a Cleveland fan a little bit, so I was happy to see them get the win. But I think both teams now know what they have to improve on after that, I'd say, emotional week 1 for those two teams. But all in all, I was very happy watching that game. I thought it was one of the better ones this weekend.
Yeah, I think it was an evenly matched game. I haven't read any of the national storylines coming out of it, but there definitely shouldn't be any, trash thrown on Baker Mayfield for how he played. He did have a sloppy first half, which was common for a lot of these teams. I mean, there's no tape out on any defenses this year. It's kind of all getting a feel for how the season goes. A lot of guys are playing their first NFL snaps in a regular season game, things like that. So, it's going to be sloppy in the first week. And I thought this game was, well back and forth type of game that happened in the league. And then really quickly, just to give you the stats, similar stats for the quarterbacks, actually. Brissett was 18 of 34 for 147 and 1 touchdown. Mayfield, 16 of 28 for 235, 1 touchdown and 1 pick. So not a bad day for either one of them, really. Moving on, though, this game was interesting. Who is on top of their division now? The Bears. Getting a big one against the 49ers in some very bad conditions at Soldier Field.
It was like a monsoon inside Soldier Field.
You know what? It wasn't just the rain. The field looked terrible. I don't know if you saw that picture floating around on social media of the lines painted on the sideline. But it was just like this. It was terrible. I didn't really get to catch much of this game, so I can't speak too much on the game notes. I just know that because of the weather conditions, this was going to be a low-scoring game. It was going to be a game it's going to be hard to catch passes. It's going to be hard to keep control of the football with how wet it was out there. I mean, they were literally scooping piles of water off with squeegees on the field before the game. So, Trey Lance and Justin Fields, Lance finally really getting his first, what I think is going to be his first full season as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Justin Fields coming back in with some more expectations on him and how he'll perform. And all in all, you got to consider the weather conditions when I give you the stats for both these quarterbacks, but not a bad day. Obviously, I think Lance had a worse day, but Lance was 13 of 28 for 164 with 1 interception. Fields, 8 of 17 for 121 and 2 touchdowns with no picks, which was good on him. He was efficient when he needed to be. He didn't throw the football much, which was good play calling by the Bears. And, not a lot of yardage, but 121 yards on 8 throws, that's not bad. Would like to see that completion percentage come up a little bit, but obviously many of you may have seen the video of Justin Fields sliding in the rain after the game, which was a really cool video. But The Bears are feeling good, and they should be because the 49ers are a good team defensively. So it was a good showing by the Bears, who I think are going to be a little bit better than people think.
Yeah. So first off, like a lot of the other games, no major injuries, so that was very nice, barring the weather conditions. I know I was watching the Pat McAfee show this morning, and a disappointment for me because I thought George Kittle was going to play, and he ended up sitting out the whole game. But they were talking about how he was out with a groin injury, and if he had played in those field conditions with a groin injury, I think his pelvis would have been ripped clean from his body if he had taken
Yeah.
the wrong pivot. So probably for the best, but no major injuries. To speak on the game a little bit, I also didn't catch much of it. I was fortunate enough to turn on the final quarter up until the 2 minute warning when I realized the Bears were going to then ice the clock and win the game. Like you said, the quarterback's forced to be efficient given the conditions. Trey Lance, he just didn't look like he was able to adapt to the intensity. Now, obviously, those weather conditions are going to add a shitload of other things that you need to now worry about in the game. As a rookie, in your first start, basically, your first good start in a season. And, I mean, it looked like he was scrambling at any sense of pressure, or at least attempting to. I mean, balls weren't really there. I know the weather conditions, yada yada. You could talk on that more, but like you could still at least get the balls to the receiver and whatnot. I won't fault him too much just because that was a terrible game to play in. But the Bears were able to be more efficient. They were able to claw back from that deficit they had. I think they were losing. What did the final end up as? 10-19. I think they were down. They were down 10-0, weren't they at one point?
They were down a lot. I don't know if it was a shutout, but I know they were down at least a score.
Yeah, so I mean the Bears were able to they were down 10-0 early in the third, and then they ended up scoring 19 unanswered points. So they were good on them to rally and come back to show you the efficiency. Like you said, Justin Fields 8 of 17. Dante Pettis had one catch, which was his 51-yard touchdown catch. So
yeah,
not a lot of offense, but it's what you would have expected. Good on the Bears to rally and, like you said, beat this good San Francisco defense. But I don't know. Once halftime hit, San Francisco came out and just straight up looked like they did not want to play football anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely there. And it's interesting too that I from what I did see Lance running around a little bit, and I couldn't tell if some of those were a quarterback design run or if it was him scrambling out of the pocket. But if they're trying to make Lance more of a mobile quarterback, I'd find that interesting. I really don't think that that's his style. I think he's more of a pocket passer, and he's not going to really be a guy that's a mobile quarterback. But we'll have to see what they do with him. I just wanted to throw out, you said there was no major injuries in this game. There was, actually.
Oh, was there?
Elijah Mitchell, running back for the 49ers, had a knee injury. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. Hopefully it's nothing serious, because that could put a big chink in the armor of the 49ers. But, yeah. On to the next game, though. This one was actually one of the more fun games to watch of the week. It was the Eagles versus the Lions, 38-35 finish. Very interesting game. Zach, I'll get your thoughts first.
Well, I was very happy because I did draft Jalen Hurts as my starting QB in one of my fantasy leagues. So, not too much to be disappointed with there. The Lions would have won this game if Goff didn't throw a pick six. Funny enough. But no, the AJ Brown to Jalen Hurts to AJ Brown connection was in full force right out the gate in week 1 here, and it looked good. AJ Brown dominated the Lions secondary all day long. Eagles offense looking very good. Jalen Hurts finishing here with technically 0 touchdowns or picks. He did have a rushing touchdown, I think, right? I think I can go check the stats real quick. Yes, he did. He finished the day with 17 rushes for 90 yards and a touchdown, including a 54-yard rush. Along with that, to complement, he had finished the day 18 of 32 for 243 yards. Eagles secondary was looking pretty good. James Bradbury had that pick six on Jared Goff and the Lions. Oh, but the Lions offense did start clawing their way back in the third quarter, and they almost got all the way back up the mountain. What did you think of the game? I thought it was, like you said, one of the best games this weekend.
Well, I'm a bit of a Lions fan myself. Not fan, but they're a team that I like to watch. They're interesting to watch, and I think that Swift, who's on my fantasy team, he was very efficient on the day. 15 carries, 144 yards. Would have liked to see him get in the end zone, but he didn't. You mentioned A.J. Brown was extremely efficient. It's going to be way better for A.J. Brown in Philadelphia than it was in Tennessee. I'll tell you that right now. As good as Hurts was today in this game, I thought Jared Goff was just as good. Even though he did have that interception, which is kind of to be expected of Jared Goff at this point. He was 21 of 37, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. So not a bad day in the air for Jared Goff, and I am a big fan of what the Lions are building. Right, they added some good pieces on defense. I really like Aiden Hutchinson from the draft this year. And I do like the pieces they have on offense. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was a great receiver for him last year, especially in the second half. He came out in this game, started playing really efficiently again. You talk about T.J. Hawkinson, who's been a staple in that Lions offense for a while now. He played well. And you're looking at DJ Chark played well, too, for, being DJ Chark. He's not what he used to be, but he's going to get there. And then I'm missing somebody else in the receiving room for the Lions. Who am I missing there?
Hawkinson. So I'm looking at the stats.
No, I had him.
Josh Reynolds then?
No.
He's the only other one that I'm seeing here on the stat line. I was just going to point out that the Lions, I think this was part of why they were so successful in the second half. They spread the wealth a lot throughout their 4 to 5 starting receivers and their tight end. It says here, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chark, Hawkinson, Swift, Reynolds, and Jamal Williams all had catches yesterday. So that's your top 4 receivers and 2 of your running backs, your 2 starting running backs, all getting opportunities to make plays, which if the Lions are building towards this gritty, we're a bunch of dudes that no one has any expectations for, we're just going to try and come in and pound you down and beat you this week, then giving everybody an opportunity to do that is going to really show who wants to win and who's just there to play the game, and it's going to really bring out those playmakers that okay, this guy made some plays this week. I know I can trust to go to him next week, and he might make some more plays.
Right. And, to add on to your point of that, I do like what the Lions are doing with their team, especially offensively. The play calling and the designs that they're running, spreading the ball out throughout everybody is going to definitely help build a better culture for the Lions that they haven't had in a while. I think that they're going to be much more efficient this year. I think that they are going to have a better year than people think. Like everybody talks about the Lions, it's always a running joke. 17-game season, 2-15 season incoming. I do think that they're going to be better than that. I could see this team easily chasing the Eagles for the lead in that division, and they're gonna push back and forth a little bit, I think. But obviously the Eagles are winning their division, but within the NFC, I think the Lions aren't going to be one of those bottom feeder teams like most people think they're going to be.
Yeah. So just to touch up real quick, so the Eagles defense had 1 interception and what looks like, I don't know how only one person got half a sack. There should be another half there somewhere. But Fletcher counts with the only technical sack of the game, and then to go along with the interception. So it seems like the Philadelphia was just playing good coverage in the first half. However, somewhere in the game, this was what I thought was the only notable injury of the game. Derek Barnett, the Eagles' end, going down with a season-ending ACL tear, which is a bit unfortunate because as bad as the Eagles have been since they won the Super Bowl, their defensive line has been a fairly consistent, dependable part of their defense. They've had good pass rush slash pressures from the guys that they've had on that D line with Derek Barnett, Fletcher Cox. Now they have Jordan Davis, and I think they also had Brandon Graham on the outside. So this is definitely going to be a loss because with the Eagles getting less QB pressures now, I feel like they're going to have to depend more on their secondary, and I just don't know how reliable their secondary can be all year because, I mean, James Bradbury had that pick six, but he's definitely gotten worse in the last couple of years as a cornerback since he kind of went – he was decent, and he's just kind of been in a decline. They still have Javon Hargrave as well as another D tackle who is arguably one of the best D tackles in the league right now. They did sign Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from the Saints, though, so he'll be a nice addition to the secondary. And I don't know. I think it'll be fun to just see how this Philly team evolves throughout the season because I loved watching them last season. It was fun watching them have a chance to win in the playoffs. So I just think it'll be a nice little. Both of these teams played off. Both of them will be a fun little story to watch throughout the season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Eagles are going to be a much better team for sure, and they're going to give everybody in the NFC a little bit of a run for their money. It's not the strongest conference this year, so I'm excited to see what Jalen Hurts does. I want to see his efficiency improve a little bit this season. I think he can be a really, really good quarterback, but he's got that rushing ability that's almost like Lamar Jackson. And it would be really good to see that passing game develop because if he does that, he's going to be a dual threat. You're talking about a top 10 quarterback and, possibly even as soon as next year. So he's ranked obviously high in fantasy in top 10, but I'm talking in terms of NFL stat keeping. He could be a top 10 quarterback as soon as next year if he figures out that passing efficiency, which I think A.J. Brown will help. They have a really strong receiving room now in Detroit or in Philadelphia. Sorry. Next game up that we're going to cover, the only game that ended in a tie, surprisingly, out of all the games that went to overtime. And you know what? This game was interesting for me. Colts and Texans finishing the game 20-20. Matt Ryan, not a good day in his Colts debut. Personally, he had the yardage. Don't get me wrong, but other than the yardage, he really didn't do much on offense.
Expect to see another touchdown in there. I think at least.
Right, 32 of 50, a lot of passing plays from the Colts, which they really didn't get Jonathan Taylor involved much either, which I was really surprised to see considering the season he had last year, but we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. 352 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Not bad stat lines, but just not necessarily talking about pass efficiency, but the overall efficiency of that offense wasn't there today. They had the yardage, everybody was kind of passing the football. Obviously, we saw, we still had a lot of good plays out of their receivers. It just wasn't, you're not capitalizing in the red zone, and that's what ended up killing the Colts here.
Yeah,
and
it just it felt like a disconnected game. It was like one team would score, whether it was a field goal or a touchdown, and then it just felt like it was ages before the next big play or scoring play happened.
Right. It was a weird feel all the way around, and but you know what? I'm not gonna lie. Maybe you disagree, but I really was. It was kind of a joke last year, right? When he came in after all the Deshaun Watson things happened, but Davis Mills actually didn't play bad, and he didn't finish the season bad last year. I don't know if the Texans believe they have a starting quarterback for the future in Davis Mills, but if he keeps playing this way, he might just be the guy that they stick with because he really didn't play bad. He was 23 of 37 for 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. And by the way, those 2 touchdowns coming in O.J. Howard, who was cut by the Bills, and just really quickly because we're Buffalo based. A lot of people are like, oh, look, OJ Howard, 2 touchdowns. What our tight end do? He had 1 catch. Yeah, but he wasn't good enough to make the Bills roster, so he goes to a bad team like the Houston Texans, and obviously when you're on a bad team like that, your numbers are going to be a little bit more inflated. You're going to get the ball a little bit more. You can play in their system, and you can probably play well, but on a good team, you're not going to play much. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I'm happy. I'm happy for OJ Howard. I'm really glad he found a little bit of success here in Houston, and I hope he keeps it going because I really am a big OJ Howard fan. But they really, outside of Brandon Cooks, they don't have much offensively. They do have the rookie running back, but the receiver room is really thin. OJ Howard definitely fills a need at tight end that they had. Davis Mills is playing good right now. Their defense isn't great, and it's really not even, I wouldn't even really consider it to be a good defense. And their offensive line is a little bit on the weaker side. So for the Texans to play this good against a good Colts defensive line and not a bad Colts defense, I think it was a good game for them. What did you think about the game, Zach?
Yeah, so like I said, it was choppy. I think that's another good word for it. The game had no rhythm. If you look at the game purely based off of stats, the Colts 100% deserved to win, but obviously it was a much different outcome on the day, and I think that comes down to the rhythm of the game. Neither team was really allowed to get into their groove from the start. I think Houston scored the first points, with a field goal, and then it was just kind of like random points, flurries scattered in by one team in each quarter. And it was pretty apparent that no rhythm had been set by either team when they had went to overtime because the game wouldn't have ended in a tie. And then nobody was able to do anything in overtime. And then it ended up in a tie. I know I was hearing a lot that the Colts were having a fantastic training camp. And if that's the case, they didn't show how fantastic of a camp they were having because they should have won the game, but didn't. So, yeah, I think the Colts this week in practice, I think it's a bunch of minor tweaks that they'll have to make to get the offense fully rolling. A lot of good individual performances, but nothing to really gel that all together to make a dominant offensive showing. But all in all, I did like the game, as shitty and choppy as it was. I think if you watched the game, you would agree it deserved to end in a tie if you didn't know the stats. So,
right.
So I mean, I don't know. That's just pretty much all I have to say. Michael Pittman had a good day, so they'll look to continue on that success for him. And I don't, based off of my list here, no real injuries from this game either. So,
yeah. And one interesting, we're going to try and keep it fun. This was an AFC South matchup within the division. Because of this game, there are no winners in the AFC South. 4 teams played, 2 of which played each other. There are no wins in the AFC South as of right now. So I just thought that was funny when I, saw that on Twitter this morning. I was like, yeah, that's right. That is true. So, that's easily one of the worst divisions in football, I think.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. Moving on to the next game, this one has some implications for us and Bills fans. AFC East matchup, Dolphins playing the Patriots at home, and the Dolphins winning that game 20-7. But man, this game was ugly. And you know what? My takeaways from this game: Mac Jones is not a good quarterback, as we all kind of thought. Tua Tagovailoa, not a good quarterback. I know Dolphins fans are going to be fired up hearing that, and they're going to be coming after me for saying that. He's not a good quarterback. He didn't have hardly any throws over 20 yards. Tyreek Hill was grabbing passes out of the air that weren't meant to be caught. They could have easily been an interception. So not a good day for the Dolphins. The only bright spot for the Dolphins, as always, is their defense, who played great in this game. They had 2 touchdowns off of the defensive players. Jones, I mean, the quarterbacks weren't, efficiency-wise, they weren't bad. But when you look at the overall efficiency of the offense, and you look at the way that they played, this was two bad quarterbacks. So Jones was 21 of 30, 213 yards, one touchdown, one pick. He should have had a much better day based off of those completions and attempts. And then Tua Tagovailoa, 23 of 33, 270, one touchdown. The one touchdown he did have was, I will say, was a great pass to Jalen Waddle between double coverage. But other than that, there was no bright spots. I mean, I saw at least 5 passes by Tua Tagovailoa that went right in the dirt. Nobody was around. So I don't know what
Tyreek was wide open.
Yeah, he's a guy that has trouble seeing the field. That's what it is for Tua Tagovailoa. And Mac Jones has the same problem. They both have trouble seeing the field and envisioning where their receivers are going to be, and that's what's going to end up hurting both of them. So, I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add on to this game, but I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, I mean, based off that comment, I guess it shows one thing that Nick Saban needs to work on over there at Alabama. But, yeah, no, pretty bad game, but pretty dominant performance by the Dolphins defense. Absolutely shut down Mac Jones. To touch up on his injury a little bit, x-rays on his back did come back negative, and it was supposed that he was suffering back spasms. So I'm assuming right now he'll probably be listed as questionable to start Sunday, I believe, is when they play. But yeah, I mean, not a single Patriots receiver over 55 yards. I think the Patriots, besides last year, they haven't been good since Tom Brady left. And that's the sad truth about it. And since then, all the pieces that Tom Brady was throwing to have also pretty much left or become players of nobody. James White just retired this season. As soon as that happened, I was like, all right, Patriots offense, even worse than it is right now. Nobody really looking like they wanted to take over the game. I mean, that's also paired with the Miami defense that is one of the better defenses in the league. But I mean, and then to touch on your point, both QBs, they were efficient. They were relatively good with their completion percentage. But it was just balls that should be good throws, good perfect throws to the receiver, not directly on point. I mean, like you said, I saw so many memes. Tyreek Hill literally had to intercept his own pass from one of the Patriots DBs. And it's like, how are you watching this performance and still believing a single word that came out of Tyreek Hill's mouth at one of his press conferences about him being the most accurate QB in the league? Like, everyone knew he was smoking something when he said that, but like now we all get to actually see it and see how stupid he is. So, I mean, pretty bad game, good defense from Miami. All in all, I think it's probably what a lot of people that are particularly AFC East fans, it's exactly what you would have expected if you knew stuff going into this game.
Right. I do think the Dolphins are going to be a team they're going to be close. They're going to get favorable matchups, and, Tyreek Hill is definitely going to steal them some games, but I don't know if they're going to be at the level that a lot of people, especially Miami fans, think that they're going to be at yet. Not to say that the Bills are the be-all, end-all of teams, but I'm just saying that Bills definitely do have the much bigger edge on the Dolphins than I think we thought coming into the season, maybe. Next game we're going to cover, probably not too much to talk about in this game, honestly. Ravens playing the Jets, and pretty much anybody that plays the Jets this year, there's not going to be much to talk about unless for some reason the Jets have some miracle week. 24-9, the final score. Lamar Jackson. Good day. Pretty efficient with the football, too. 17 of 30, 213 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. And then Flacco. You know what? Flacco didn't play bad.
No, he wasn't the worst. I mean, he threw 59 times. I just saw that.
Yeah, and they just didn't capitalize on anything. I mean, they do have a up-and-coming, young group, right? Breece Hall really didn't get many touches. It was mostly Michael Carter in this game. Garrett Wilson wasn't that involved. I honestly don't even know who the other wide receivers are. It's always changing in New York. But he had 300 yards. He did have a touchdown and 1 pick, so that's pretty good for Joe
A
Flacco, who
washed
might
up
end
Joe
up being
Flacco. It's what you would have expected 7 years ago, but now it's like,
right now. It's a pretty good numbers for Joe Flacco. So, but the Jets, I think they're going to be better than people think. People think they're a 2-win team. Same thing as Detroit. I don't think they're a 2-win team. I think they could easily be pushing 6, 7 wins this year. Um, Once Zach Wilson comes back, I think that's going to help a lot. But their O line's not there. Their defense is pretty abysmal. So it's a work in progress in New York. And I don't know, Lamar Jackson having himself a great day again, showing why he should be getting paid, and he's probably going to get franchise tagged at the end of the season. So,
yeah, the only way the Jets were going to win this game is if we saw Ravens Joe Flacco, and that was never going to happen. I think the Jets and the Lions are in a very similar boat. And like I touched on earlier, the Lions almost came back from a very good offensive display from Philly. And part of that, I think, was contributed to the amount of target sharing there was. And I'm looking at the stats right now, and Joe Flacco threw it to 7 different people, a tight end, 2 running backs, and 4 receivers. So I think for the Jets, especially once they get Zach Wilson back, this target sharing should have a bigger impact because Zach Wilson's more of an improviser where Flacco's a pocket passer. So he can actually scramble out of the pocket, extend the play, and then throw it to that check down guy who might be left open in the middle of the field. But I think the Jets, similarly to the Lions, they're getting the pieces now over the last couple of years, and they just need to figure out who those big name guys are from their respective teams that are going to step up and really, kind of get some pieces to gel together week after week to put together a few wins throughout the season.
right, yeah, I'm excited for the Jets' future. I don't think it's going to be within the next year, but I think in a couple of years we'll be talking about a better Jets team for sure. Next game up, Raiders and Chargers. This one was another close one. Uh, I took the Raiders in my pick'em pool. I did think that Derek Carr and Devontae Adams were going to have a good connection. They did have a good connection in this game, but it just wasn't enough to get the win. 24-19 final score. Carr and Herbert both had good days. Carr obviously much worse in terms of the turnover battle, but aside from the turnovers, they were similar days. 22 of 37 for Carr, 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, but the 3 picks, which really killed him. And then a very efficient day out of Justin Herbert, 46 of 34, 279 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like I said, Devontae Adams was very good. I thought he was a great piece for the Raiders, and once they kind of figure out the offense with him being involved now, they're going to be a hard team to stop. Hunter Renfrow had one of his uglier days as a Raider, I thought. Couple drop passes. His route running wasn't there in this game. And Herbert solidifying himself as an elite quarterback yet again, stepping into some high expectations. But another takeaway, the Chargers defense is just really good. I mean, they have some really good players. And even though they have Zach's favorite corner in the league, J.C. Jackson, they do have 2 young, good corners. I'm not a big J.C. Jackson fan either, but they do have 2 good young corners in Asante Samuel Jr. and J.C. Jackson. So I do like their secondary, and I thought their D line played well. They didn't necessarily shut down the Raiders, but they did obviously won the turnover battle, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, this game was almost just about a 50-50, maybe a 51-49% split in favor of the Raiders, purely based off personnel. But this game could have went either way. I had picked the Chargers to win. And I think this game, it's no shocker. It came down to turnovers. And Herbert's never really going to have like a 3 or 4 turnover day unless he's facing a defense that is just otherworldly. But we know Carr has those games every once in a while where he just doesn't – he throws the ball a lot, so he's going to have a lot of yards, but he doesn't throw the ball well. And we saw that yesterday, throwing 3 picks, and that's ultimately what cost them the game. I mean, you throw one less interception, maybe even 2 less interceptions. One of those turns into a touchdown, you've won the game. So,
Right.
I mean, that Raiders team, don't get me wrong, that AFC West is easily the best division in the league this year. It's going to be one to watch out for. Anybody could win. This is just one loss in a season that's going to be very difficult. The Raiders, I don't think really have too much to work on other than, keeping the turnovers down. But they just need to put this loss behind them. Just worry about, hey, I threw picks in the game. Time to move on from all the turnovers. You need to look ahead towards next week because all 4 teams in that division cannot afford to get hung up on a loss.
No, like you said, I think that's the best division in football right now. All 4 of those teams could easily be playoff teams, and unfortunately, most likely 2 of them won't be. And unless there's a massive collapse in some of the other divisions in the AFC, which I don't see happening. But like you said, the fact that the Raiders, this wasn't the highest scoring game, and I think that if you would have said to people it was going to be 24-19, some people would have been like, oh, yeah, but some people would have been like, oh, it seems a little low for this game. The fact that this was a 1-touchdown game with the 3 picks that Derek Carr threw should tell you everything you need to know about the Las Vegas Raiders this season. They are going to be just fine. People are going to throw dirt on Derek Carr because of this performance. They're going to throw dirt on the Raiders for this performance. And they're going to try and make it seem like the Raiders are going to be a team that collapses in that division. The fact that you had 3 turnovers and you still were within 1 score, that's really good. Your defense didn't play great in that game. Obviously, you gave up a lot to Justin Herbert. But going up against a quarterback like Justin Herbert, it's hard to get a stop. It's like going against Mahomes, Allen, Brady, those guys. It's hard to get stops against those quarterbacks. So the fact that they, had such an efficient day offensively, despite losing that turnover battle, it's a good sign for the Raiders. And I think you clean that up, you're talking about a team that, is really, really good. But like you said, that's going to be the challenge for the Raiders this year because that's kind of Derek Carr's MO. He is a little bit of I think he's fluky in some of those picks that he has, but you can always kind of count on it for Derek Carr. He's not the best at protecting the football, but we'll see how they do this season. Hopefully they do better than they did in this game.
Yeah, and also to touch upon the point that I said they need to make sure they move on from this, the Raiders, you could argue who took the bigger loss here in week 1 because while the Raiders did lose, the Chargers lost Keenan Allen for I think the Chargers play the Chiefs Thursday night, so they have a short week already. He's likely questionable for that game, if not ruled doubtful or out already. And in my opinion, the Raiders have more receiving threats than the Chargers do. The Chargers have some players who are coming into their own, like Jalen Guyton and Joshua Palmer, I think can step up in lieu of injuries. However, when you think Chargers, you think Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Whereas you look at the Raiders, they now have Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow. I mean, Josh Jacobs is a good enough receiving back. I mean, Chargers also have Austin Eckler. But so it's like you think about it, and it's the Chargers who now have a short week with their best receiver out. They're really going to have to focus on, okay, how are we going to game plan for this Kansas City team that looked very good against the Cardinals? So like I said, division's a toss-up. Both of these teams immediately need to get on with their week, look towards next week, because that division is going to be a tough one.
Key for the Chargers moving forward, too, is they're going to have to get Austin Eckler more involved, not just in the rushing game, but in the receiving. And somebody who did step up in the Chargers offense, too, who I think gets overlooked a lot, Gerald Everett. I think Gerald Everett's a really good tight end. I don't know why he gets as much hate as he does, but I think he's... In my book, I put him in the top 15 tight ends in the league. But a lot of people put him, below 20 and below even 25, some people. But it's just because normally he doesn't get the workload with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But with Keenan Allen out, now you're going to have to change it up a little bit. And you're probably going to be looking at Gerald Everett when you get in the red zone because he's Listen, that guy is a beast. I mean, the touchdown he had yesterday, he caught it at the 5. The DB couldn't bring him down until he was in the end zone.
Yeah.
So, he was all over him too. So he's a big boy. He's got some muscle behind him. So I really like Gerald Everett. But moving on, we have a few more games covered. We got 4 more on this list that played this weekend. Next up, a NFC matchup between the Packers and the Vikings, and this one was interesting. And I say
terrible. The Packers were terrible. Their offense was abysmal. I understand Rodgers and his receivers are probably going to take the first couple weeks to get adjusted to each other, but the offense was terrible. Their defense was definitely. I'm not going to say they got worse because they really didn't, aside from the loss of Zadarius Smith. But they 100% got off to a slow start and never got to the actual start line until probably about 12 minutes left in the game.
Well, you know what I will say, though, that is a good point that was brought up in the broadcast of that game. This is the MO of the Green Bay Packers. Last season, they came out in the season opener. They got absolutely demolished by the New Orleans Saints. They got absolutely demolished by the Vikings here. I think it's a little bit more of an implication because this is a divisional matchup. However, I do think the Packers will probably be fine because Darren Rodgers, they've never had anybody big on the roster really besides Devontae Adams within the past 10 years of Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback. But my God, the one thing I will say in this game is a two-parter.
Yeah, it is a two-parter. Justin Jefferson. That's all you gotta say.
That's not the two-parter. That's part of it. But I'll get to my notes first. Rodgers has no wide receivers.
Zero.
Allen Lazard being his number one. Listen, I'm a big fan of Allen Lazard, but I do not think he can handle wide receiver 1 duties. And it's probably going to show this season.
I didn't even know he played last night. I'm not going to lie. That's how bad the wide receivers were. I didn't even know Allen Lazard played last night. I only knew of the 2 rookies because the one dropped a touchdown in the first quarter and the other one caught 3 garbage time catches.
Yeah. Minnesota might be a team to watch out for if they continue to play this way. That's a big F because Kirk Cousins is a similar MO of Derek Carr. He does not protect the football that well. But aside from that point, Justin Jefferson putting up Randy Moss style numbers here. Over 150 yards and 2 touchdowns in the day. And you know what? As much as I love him, Jair Alexander could not handle Justin Jefferson. Flat out got burned all day long. And you know what? It did. New coach for the Vikings. I believe he came from the Rams, correct?
Yeah, I believe he was. I don't remember what he was from the Rams, but
he's
from the McVay coaching tree.
I think he was the OC because they were talking about the route running that Justin Jefferson had in that game. The routes that they were having Justin Jefferson go were insane. He was wide open.
I was going to say, he quite literally, somehow his route running combined with whatever defensive coverage the Packers were constantly running, he was literally left with 10 yards of space on either side of him every time he caught the ball.
Yeah. And you know what? The thing that's great about this game for the Vikings to me is we'll get to the stat lines and quarterbacks in just a second. But the big thing coming out of this game, and I'm trying not to hype up the Vikings a lot because I know the Vikings always have.
Operate. They're going to win these first 2, plummet the season, and then try and rescue it in the last 2 months.
Right. But the good thing about the Vikings, here's what I will say. Justin Jefferson is a beast. And you know what, as a quick break too, as a Bills fan, a lot of people like to argue with Vikings fans. Oh, we got the better end of the trade. Why can't sports fans just be happy about a trade that works out? This was a perfect trade for both Buffalo and Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Buffalo gets a veteran, seasoned wide receiver who's an elite receiver in the game, and Stephon Diggs, a piece that they needed for Josh Allen to take his game to the next level, while Minnesota adds a young, exciting, and arguably one of the best receivers in the game right now in Justin Jefferson. I'm happy for both teams. But aside from that point, Justin Jefferson goes off in this game. Adam Thielen really wasn't used that much.
Mm-hmm.
You have two elite receivers in Minnesota, and Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, and they smoked the Packers, who have a great defense, without even really using Adam Thielen. Not to mention, they barely used Dalvin Cook in this game.
Yep.
Sure, he was helping them drive down the field, but as far as a red zone guy, Dalvin Cook wasn't around for that. You had KJ Osborne, Justin Jefferson. You have Irv Smith Jr. Like, Vikings have a good team.
Yes, they do.
I just think it's the defense that gets them caught up a little bit at times because they don't have the best D in the league. They're kind of a mid-range defense. But if they play this way all season, I could see them easily taking that division.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was already, when we did our team rankings, the division rankings, there was a slight bit of me that was like, the Packers are not 100% going to win this division, even though I did pick them. But after this week 1 performance, the overreaction immediately points to, okay, the Vikings might be better than a lot of people were thinking they would be.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's surprising because normally they do have expectations coming on them, and I really didn't feel that there was high expectations on them this season. Like, they were just kind of there, and everybody's like, you know what? I'm not putting expectations on them because they never reach them. So they might play better without this pressure. We'll see what happens if they continue to stay at the top of the division and they start feeling that pressure from the outside. But Aaron Rodgers, not a bad day, I guess you could say. But in terms of Aaron Rodgers' numbers, not great either. He was 22 to 34, 195 yards, 1 interception. And then Kirk Cousins, who I'm not really a big fan of, but I thought he had a great day, actually. He was 23 to 32, 277 yards and 2 touchdowns, no picks, which is big for Kirk Cousins because, like I said, he has that Derek Carr MO. They're kind of similar. They don't protect the football well, but he did good in this game. I thought that was a great, well-rounded game from Minnesota.
Yeah, all in all, Minnesota 100% deserved to win. They looked a better team the whole game. Only thing positive about Green Bay's day was A.J. Dillon. That's literally the only thing. Leading receiver, arguably their best rusher, although Aaron Jones was actually decent on the ground. He didn't have a lot of yards.
Yeah.
He was looking good, so that'll be something nice to look forward to. Packers will hopefully have Elgton Jenkins and David Bakhtiari back sometime during the season. And by yesterday's performance, they're going to need him because Aaron Rodgers, I mean, you can't do anything about rookies dropping balls and not getting open, but you can't even throw to him if your offensive line is imploding as badly as it did yesterday. Hell, you almost got one of your neck fucking vertebrates knocked out when you got sandwiched in midair between 3 people trying to throw it back to A.J. Dillon, who had just gotten pancaked by one of the dudes that's trying to kill you right now. So, I mean, a terrible week 1 start from the Packers, but we have seen this the last few years, and we have seen the Packers find their rhythm and ultimately end up doing well. So, it's not the biggest concern. It's just a shock that they were this bad.
Yeah, I would agree. But, all right, moving on to the next one. We had the New York Giants taking on the Tennessee Titans. I think
Does somebody smell upset alert?
Well, hold on now. Listen. I just wanted to say I think you agree with me in this, but I think the Titans are one of the most overrated teams in the AFC.
It showed yesterday.
Despite the fact that they didn't use him, this A.J. Brown departure is going to hurt. I'm a big fan of Treylon Burks, but with that being said, A.J. Brown leaving is going to put a hole, and they lost Julio Jones, keeping that in mind. They have a Robert Woods who's older and coming off injuries and things like that, so I'm not, and the Giants are young and exciting to me. And maybe it's just because, they're being now coached by Brian Daboll, who I'm really happy he got his first win, his first game as a head coach in the NFL. But I thought this was, despite the score and the storyline that you might hear from this game, I thought this was a well-rounded, full team effort from the Giants, right?
Agreed.
And Brian Daboll is famous for these with the Buffalo Bills, influencing their play calls. But Brian Daboll is not afraid of anybody, and he will go for it, and that's exactly what he did in this game. He went for the 2-point conversion. He could have went for the field goal to tie it with a minute left, but he went for the win. And that's the nice thing about him coming into a team that really doesn't have expectations either. He can do that, and even if he loses that game, there's not going to be all kinds of backfire on him for it. So he went for it, and it paid off big time because the Titans, who were marching down the field with a minute left, saw the Giants take 2 bad penalties that moved them in the field goal range, which is something they're going to have to clean up, obviously. But they got lucky with the kicker missing, but it pays off. You get the win. And that's big for morale in this young Giants locker room, who they have a lot of rookie receivers. They have Saquon back, so if he stays healthy, that's going to affect their season. Their defensive line looks a little bit better. The defense is not really good, but I think they're going to start getting there in the next couple seasons for sure. The only question you're going to have is going to be Daniel Jones, and he really didn't have a good day today, but he did enough to get the win, which is all they needed. So my other key takeaway too: Derrick Henry was not productive in this game, in my mind. And if that continues next week against the Buffalo Bills, the Bills should steamroll them. So, but we'll save that for the prediction episode we're going to do later this week. But Daniel Jones in this game, 17 of 21, pretty efficient completion percentage, 188 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. So, like I said, not a bad day. It definitely could have been better. But for Daniel Jones, that's not a bad day at all. Would have liked to see him break 200. But Ryan Tannehill, on the other hand, 20 of 33, not really that efficient, but that's kind of Tannehill's thing. 266 yards. He did have a lot of yardage in this game and 2 touchdowns with no picks, so he was careful with the football, but they didn't put up the numbers that people think. Like, people hear Tennessee Titans are like, oh, they're right there. They're chasing the Chiefs. They were the number 1 seed last year. Listen, they were the number 1 seed because Derrick Henry had an unreal season. And it's hard for a running back to keep doing that. And I understand he's the king. But listen, somebody's got to hit a wall at some point. And this could be the year that Derrick Henry hits a wall. And it could have a lot to do with the offensive line of the Tennessee Titans. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I was just going to get to that. Their offensive line really, it's shocked me for the last 3 years how the Titans have had such a good run offense because their offensive line really has never been that good. Taylor Lewan, in my opinion, was good about 4 or 5 years ago, but he has been in and out of the IR room constantly for different injuries over the last few seasons. So I wouldn't consider him, I'd consider him nothing more than good right now. Roger Saffold, he's always been a decent guard in his career too, from I think he was on the Rams first to the Titans and now the Bills. They lost him, like I just said, to the Bills. So that's another starting tackle / guard that you're missing off your O-line now. Derrick Henry can only run through so many people, and the reason he's constantly running through people is because it's only one person in front of him because his line was doing a decent enough job blocking. Their line isn't as good as it used to be, so that's going to be an issue for him, making the cuts through the lanes as efficiently as possible so you face the least amount of resistance. And then on top of that, I mean, he has to stay healthy, and if you have a worse line, you're going to be taking bigger hits. I mean, if you saw the replay of the hit he took from Tate Crowder, he got blown up by a nobody from the Giants defense. So, I mean, like you said, I think it's too early to overreact right now, but I think Henry's definitely going to have a down year, but it's just we're going to have to see how down it is by the numbers he's been putting up. Additionally, like you said, it was a team win for the Giants. It was a good call to go for it because, like you said, you don't get it. Okay, our coach had the guts to go for it. We're a team that still sucks. Oh, well, we didn't get it. But now that you did get it, that's going to instill a culture of, all right, our coach believes in us that, we might not be the best team on paper, but we can make plays and get it done, whether it comes down to the last seconds, last minutes of the game, one play, yada, yada. It's going to show that the coach and the coordinators care about the players and they want to give them the chance to go make plays to win the game. And, also going back to the Daniel Jones stat line, like you said, efficient. I saw a replay of the interception he threw It was a case of the Giants got the ball in good field position, and they were trying to score quick because they were still down by a touchdown at that point, and they were just trying to move too fast, and I think they tried to make a play that wasn't really going to be there, and he threw a ball that if it was a different play, it might have been a touchdown, but he threw a ball to an out route that just got read, and it was a bad throw, and it got picked up by the DB.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, looking at it, somehow the Titans got the 1 seed last year, right? And this kind of felt like a similar situation to when the Bengals beat the Titans last year in the playoffs. You didn't really think it was going to happen. You didn't think the Bengals were going to go as far as they did. You didn't think they were going to upset the Titans, although you knew there was a chance with their air offense. In this game as well, it kind of felt like that, like, oh, the Titans were clearly the better team. They should have won the game, and they didn't win the game. And so, it'll be interesting. Like you said, the AFC South, one of the worst divisions in the league. So we'll have to keep an eye out for these teams. But, I mean, honestly, coming from a franchise like the Bills, you can always appreciate when a team that's really bad is really trying to figure something out. I think that's probably why you like the Jets and are happy to see what they can do. I'm just happy the Giants got this win for sake of their organization because of the shit that they've had to deal with since Eli Manning retired.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know what? Even though you said the Jets, like, I am not excited, but I'm just interested to see the moves they make. A team that I'm excited for is the Giants. I think they do have a lot of good pieces. And you know what? The thing, like you said, Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, who was an assistant GM with the Bills, they made a lot of good moves in this offseason, right? They had one of the best drafts, too, especially in the first round. I think they're going to add the right guys and the right pieces. And like I said, this going for it decision, the fact that it paid off, like you said, it goes a long way in the room. These guys aren't guys that are coming in with big expectations, but they know that the coaching staff is behind them now. They have that, like, even if they weren't there from training camp or preseason, they're going to be at that point now. They're going to say, all right, they know that there's not really expectations on it. They're going to let us go out and play. They're not going to micromanage us. They're just going to say, go out, do what you do the best you can, and we're going to go from there. And if you play well, obviously it's going to pay off for you. If not, we'll see what happens. But I think they're a good team that might be a little bit better than people think. It all depends on the strength of their schedule because I haven't really looked at it. But I think in their division, they should definitely be towards the top. I don't know if they'll be the winner, but I'm excited for them. And you know what? It's hard because running backs are always hurt, and Saquon is in that boat. I'm really pulling for Saquon to be healthy this year because I think that changes the landscape of the Giants' offense a lot. And him and McCaffrey are both guys that I want to pull for this year because as funny as it is to some people on the memes and all this and that, like, those are two guys that they work their tail off. They are dedicated to this game. They got to start. The luck for them has got to change somewhere. It has to because they're two great players in the league, and I do want to see them play full seasons and see what type of numbers they can put up. So, on to the next game. A little bit of a storyline in this one, not much, but Chiefs playing the Cardinals, and they absolutely crushed the Arizona Cardinals, 44-21.
They killed them.
Any thought, and I'm guilty of falling into it too, any thought that Patrick Mahomes won't be all right without Tyreek Hill, well, that pretty much you can crumple up and throw right out the window. 30 of 39 on the day, extremely efficient. 360 yards, one of the highest yardages this week in the NFL, and 5 touchdowns, not to mention no picks or turnovers. Kyler Murray, 22 of 34, 193 yards, no touchdowns for a guy that just signed a massive extension. And I understand there are injuries in the Cardinals room right now, but this was in my mind, I understand it's a tough matchup against the Chiefs. In my mind, this was a bit of a collapse. I don't know how you feel, but Kyler Murray looked like he struggled. He was running all over the field again for his life. And maybe that had to do with the receivers. I think it had more to do with the O-line. Like, it's hard to go up against the Chiefs D-line, but the O-line flat out couldn't handle the pass rush that they were. And these are two teams with decent defenses. Like, the Cardinals' defense ain't bad. It's not great. Not as good as the Chiefs. But this should have been a little bit closer, in my opinion. And it was like I was watching on Red Zone, and I wasn't even interested at points because it was a lot of the same things that we've seen from the Chiefs. It's getting boring at this point. Like, Patrick Mahomes, like, it's never boring to watch Patrick Mahomes. He's a great guy to watch. But it's boring in the sense that, like, at least other teams, they spread out the offense, right? Every time the Chiefs game came on Red Zone, it was, oh, we just had a 24-yard pass from Patrick Mahomes, a little sidearm shot to Travis Kelce. Like, teams don't get it, and the Bills have it engraved in their mind from the playoff game. If you don't shut down Travis Kelce, you're not shutting down the Kansas City Chiefs. And simply put, I don't know, and I really don't even know if the Bills can do it. I don't know if there's a defense out there that can stop Travis Kelce. He is one of the hardest guys in the NFL to stop. I don't know what you feel about this game, but those are my takeaways.
Yeah, I don't have much to say other than the fact that it shows that if you are an elite quarterback, depending on the scheme or the day, you can make it work. All it takes is one player for you to throw to have an efficient day. Now, I mean, you could argue Aaron Rodgers, but it depends on the scheme, and it also depends on how well the other team across from you plays. The Vikings played phenomenal. The Cardinals did not. But, I mean, I think the tipping point or the turning point, I don't know if the Cardinals ever had a chance. I was not looking at anything as a build-up to this because I didn't care about the game. But
no.
I know at one point, I want to say the Chiefs were only up by a score, maybe two. And Isaiah Simmons dropped possibly a fucking sitting duck right to him from Mahomes. And it just literally hit him on the hands and fell down. So I think I didn't look at any of the other replays from the game. Maybe there were other opportunities where they could have gotten a turnover. But all I'm saying is that turnover that could have been the turning point of this game. But anything after that was just completely run by the Chiefs, and their offense looked dominant. And I didn't see any point that the Cardinals were going to try and make a run to come back after that. That's really all I have to say. I mean, other than that, Justin Reed kicking for them. Harrison Butker injured after the first extra point. He injured his plant ankle on the kickoff. Went back in the locker room. Justin Reed, I believe, he did a kickoff. He made an extra point and missed an extra point. And then they basically took a 30 by 30 square foot roll of medical tape, wrapped it around Harrison Butker's ankle, and then shoved him back out on the field to make 4 more kicks. So reports that I've heard show that Butker's ankle looks like a balloon from a kid's party. So hopefully it's not an issue that lingers. But, I mean, we've seen players where they get hurt. Doctor's like, all right, let's slap some tape on it. No, I'm good. Let me get back out there. And then they end up being out for 2 weeks because they couldn't sit out for 2 hours. So hopefully not a big injury for him. He's one of the league's best kickers. But Justin Reed absolutely murders footballs. And if he's able to, get into the rhythm of kicking, if they're really going to go further with him for the next few weeks, if he can get into the rhythm of kicking and really find that accuracy, he's going to be a sick fill-in for the Chiefs because he clearly has shown that he can kick the ball.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting that a guy does as much as Justin Reed does. But all right, to wrap it up here, our Sunday night football matchup between two teams that probably most people didn't want to see. the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys, who go to mention the Cowboys are in Dak Prescott's career didn't have a win against the Bucs. And quick question for you in this, Zach: Are they still them boys?
No, I'm sure you saw the meme I sent to our group chat earlier. The
Yeah,
Cowboys are already not them boys anymore.
yeah.
Tom Brady keeping
That's
up
what
the
I was,
meme.
that's what I was going after there. But Chris Godwin, the big story in this, he was hurt. So Tampa Bay down the receiver again. Brady didn't look the same to me. Now I only watched to halftime because I couldn't even stay awake anymore. I was like,
It
this
was a
is
bad game again.
it was boring. Uneventful chunk plays here and there. Just wasn't what I expected out of Tom Brady for sure, and let alone Dak Prescott, because even when he was in the game before his injury, he just didn't seem like himself. But Dak was hurt, as I mentioned. He left the game. He now has a fractured thumb. They are calling for 6 to 8 weeks, so that's going to really put a damper on the Cowboys season. Um, I think there was another injury to a receiver in this game for the Cowboys, right?
I know Michael Gallup was still out, but their safety,
Yeah.
Jared Curse, also came down with a knee injury, I believe, and didn't come back. So
Yeah.
I don't know what the timeline is on him. I know, like you said, you mentioned Prescott's injury. He did, I believe, get surgery on his hand this morning. So, like you said, out no earlier than I think 6 weeks at least. And then, like you mentioned, Godwin. It was thankfully not the knee that he injured last.
I think it's hamstring, right?
It was hamstring. So he might be back for their game. I think they play Sunday as well. But if it was my guess, with him coming back from an injury as well, they're probably just going to sit him for next week.
Yeah, there's no reason to rush him. I mean, you still got Mike Evans, you still got Leonard Fournette in the backfield. They're gonna probably struggle a little bit, but it's not a situation where we're down Mike Evans too. Like if he can play, he's got to go. I think they're gonna take their time with his injury, but as I mentioned, Dak Prescott didn't look like himself. 14 of 29, 134 yards and one interception, no touchdowns. This was before he left the game. They were the number one passing offense in the league, surprisingly, last year. I didn't know that until last night when I was doing some research. They were actually one of the more efficient offenses in the NFL. It was just that they didn't get the wins to go with it. So surprising to see that out of Dak Prescott, especially with the room that he's got. Like CeeDee Lamb is unbelievable. Ezekiel Elliott, he's hit or miss. I'm not the biggest Zeke fan just because of that. He's kind of a hot and cold running back, but he wasn't really great in this game either. Neither was Leonard Fournette. This just was a uneventful game all around. Brady, not bad, 18 to 27 for a guy that just came out of retirement. 212 yards, one touchdown, and one pick. So not a bad night for Tom Brady, but not the definitely not the old Tom Brady that we saw at least to start the season. I don't know if you have anything else to add. If not, we will head over to our other segments.
No, not really. I mean, it was just a bad, sloppy game. I had it on, but I think I shut it off halfway through the fourth. It was just, like you said, not interesting at all. And then I already went over the injuries, so yeah, pretty much all it is Dem boys are going to be Dem struggling boys for the next few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we're gonna do something for the podcast covering the NFL that's gonna be a little bit different. Obviously, we just went through all the matchups. We want to try and do these every week. Hopefully, we can. But we're doing 3 different segments, so we're gonna do winners and losers from each conference. They could be players, they could be teams, they could be units, whatever. Even coaches. And then we're going to do best quarterback of the day, worst quarterback of the day. We'll kind of debate each other on these things. And then at the end, I'm going to add 3 teams that I think, and it's not going to be 3 teams every week. Just so happen that it's 3 teams each this week. We have teams that are going to be, I think, in panic mode and teams that are in kind of chill out, relax mode heading into next week. And once we wrap these up, we're going to do another episode, as I mentioned before. Later in the week, probably looking at Friday night after the Thursday night matchup, predicting all the other matchups in the NFL this week. So, do you want me to start, or do you want to start with winners or losers?
I'll start. So we're going to start with the AFC since our native Bills are from that conference. So for me, I have picked the Cleveland Browns as my Week 1 AFC winner. Simply because of all the bullshit and drama that they have had surrounding them all offseason, there is not a chance that every player in that locker room could have sounded out even remotely any of the noise that was coming into that organization with all the bullshit that was happening in the offseason. They did not know up until 2 weeks ago if Deshaun Watson, the QB they just traded for a huge package and then signed to a multi-million-dollar deal, was even going to play. And they came into Carolina as the quote-unquote underdogs labeled by the media, up against a quarterback who was going to be on his revenge tour to beat you after they traded him away, and they still came in and got it done. Barely, but they came in and got it done after all that bullshit. So the Browns are my Week 1 AFC winner.
I don't think I'll debate you too much on that. I mean, like I said, I've voiced my opinion on the Browns before and the way that they've run the organization, and putting all of those things aside, focusing on just the game that was played. I do think that they were a decent run team, and this, like Jacoby Brissett did play better than I thought he would. The rushing offense was a little bit better than. I guess a little more efficient, I should say. Not better, but efficient than I thought they would be. And even though they did beat the Panthers, I thought the Panthers played extremely well for a team that really hasn't in years past. But this is a good win for the Cleveland Browns as far as stats and wins go. It's going to be hard for me all season to block out all the other noise and everything that's going on with the Browns, and I have my opinion on it and all that, but all that aside, I do think that the Browns did play well in the AFC this week. They are not my winners from the AFC. My winners from the AFC is going to be the Houston Texans. I talked about it when we covered the game. Like I said, if Davis Mills plays like this, he's all season, he's going to be a good quarterback in Houston for them. And I thought that they were really efficient, and it's not like it's going up against a top 10 defense in the Colts, but they do have a decent defense. I think that Davis Mills was efficient when he needed to be. The whole team kind of played well, and even though it was a comeback win, it's good for a team like Houston to get a comeback win when you are expected to be a bottom feeder in the NFL, and you come out against the Colts. And even though Matt Ryan's not the best quarterback, they do have a solid roster aside from that, and I think that was a good win for them. I think that they're a winner in the AFC this week. I don't know how you feel.
I could definitely see it. Yeah, I mean, even though they still obviously have a long ways to go, this was most clearly a step in the right direction. So,
yeah.
Alrighty, so on to my loser in the AFC, without a doubt, needs to be the Patriots. They looked horrible. Their offense was god-awful. They had injuries on both sides of the ball, I think. Oh, yeah, technically did. Mac Jones, then their safety, Adrian Phillips, went out and did not come back. Mac Jones is questionable for this week, which means he might not even play. I don't even know who the backup QB is for the Patriots. So they're going to look... is it still...
I think it's Brian Hoyer.
Is it still Brian Hoyer? Okay.
I think so.
If that's the case, they're going to look even worse next week. And I just don't see any positive points that the Patriots are able to take away from this offensive performance in Week 1. And for that reason, they have to be my losers.
Yeah, you know what? I can't debate you much there. I think that was a really bad showing by the Patriots. And good for us Bills fans. But yeah, I don't have much to say about that one. I have a different loser in the AFC East. Just for purposes of it being week one, there's obviously expectations surrounding every team and how they're going to do this year. My losers of the week, Jacksonville Jaguars. you went up against, and I understand, I said it when we covered them, a good Washington defense. But all that aside, the moves you made in the offseason, Trevor Lawrence supposedly being your franchise quarterback, Travis Etienne in his second year as a running back supposed to take another step. They looked god awful in that game. And even though they were close and they came back, it was just like a sloppy mess by the Jacksonville Jaguars all game. Marvin Jones, I think, was one of the better receivers. Even though Christian Kirk did have the yardage, I think Marvin Jones was one of the most reliable guys, and he was already on your team. He wasn't a guy you brought in to make better. He's been pushed down to wide receiver 3 on the depth chart because you've now backed up the bench truck for Zay Jones and Christian Kirk, which still blows my mind that the money that they gave out to 2 of those guys. But your tight ends aren't great. Your quarterback is showing that he really hasn't taken that next step, at least in week 1. We'll see how he does the rest of the season. But maybe it's the fact that I'm not a fan of Trevor Lawrence coming out. But I think that this was a lost game all around. By the way, you lost this game in a terrible division, which you could easily win. But now because the Texans and Colts have tied, they were already ahead of you in divisional standings. So you've already hurt your team in that way. And like I said, you went up against the Commanders team who was not good either. They don't have good expectations on them. This should have been a win for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it wasn't. And to me, that's a big loss. And their defense looked horrendous today. I mean, they didn't get blown out all game by the Commanders, don't get me wrong, but you allowed Carson Wentz to get 300 yards almost, and he had at least three touchdowns on the day, I believe it was. Look back at my notes really quick.
3 touchdowns and 1 pick, I think.
Yeah, you only got 1 pick out of Carson Wentz, which is not good. I mean, you could easily get more out of Carson Wentz. Yeah, he had 300 yards and 4 touchdowns on your team.
Oh, okay.
I mean, to me, that he had 2 picks as well. Sorry, 2 picks. But only 275 yards out of Lawrence when you throw the ball 42 times. That's not really screaming franchise leading quarterback, and the drop passes by Etienne really rubbed me the wrong way, considering the fact that he was thought of coming into this his NFL career, and especially this season. They're like, well, he's not just a threat on the ground; he's a receiving back, and they weren't even like he had pressure on him. He was just dropping them, and they were easy passes to catch. So to me, Jaguars are the loser of the week, and I think that it's probably going to stay that way unless something really changes in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I can accept your decision to make them the loser of the week. They lost a game that they were winning the entire time to an average quarterback, and if you're not able to get it done against average competition, you're certainly not going to beat good competition unless it's some fluky miracle. Similarly, last year to the Bills, etc., that type of thing. So, yeah, I agree. They got some things that they need to figure out. Moving over to the NFC, my winner for the NFC this week, the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, we have a tie.
Do we agree on something here?
We do. We do have the same winner.
The Vikings looked great in all aspects of the game. They were getting good enough run blocking for Dalvin Cook. They were using Alexander Mattison a little bit more in the game. I think they're trying to distribute the load that's put on Dalvin Cook's shoulders, which is only going to benefit their team, I think, because the less carries and contact you put Cook through, the less likely he is to get injured, and the less likely he is to get injured, the more efficient he can be on the field. And I think Madison's a nice little compliment to Dalvin Cook too. I think he's serviceable, so that's nice. Justin Jefferson just literally – I don't even want to say he's unguardable. He was just flying, and everyone else was walking.
He lit up the Packers D.
Yeah. There was not an opportunity where I looked on the field and I was like, oh, that ball's going to Justin Jefferson. He's not going to catch it. I never thought that anything – that Kirk Cousins wanted to throw remotely in his direction was going to be caught yesterday by him.
Well, with the green on the Packers uniforms, I kind of got confused the Packers D and a Christmas tree because Justin Jefferson let them all play a Christmas tree. So,
yeah. And I know another story too. Zadarius Smith leaving the Packers after they wouldn't re-sign him, joins division rival Minnesota and looks absolutely unstoppable. He was he was quite literally power rushing his way all over that Green Bay line. I mean, like I said earlier when we covered the game, he pancaked the shit out of A.J. Dillon to only triple team sack Aaron Rodgers and almost break his neck. I mean, the dude was on a mission to do everything in his power to single-handedly stop the Packers, and it went a long way, being a massive contribution for that defense to complement that Vikings offense that was rolling yesterday. And so that's why I got them as my winner, and I'm assuming that's why you got them as yours too.
Yeah, like I said, we talked about it when we covered the game. They were efficient, and they were only efficient with some guys. They didn't even really distribute the ball equally throughout the entire offense. Imagine what they would do to a team if they play like this and they distribute the football. They could really run up the score on some teams if they play like this every week. And it's all going to come down, I think, to Kirk Cousins, how he plays. If he continues at a pace like this, you're talking about a really good season coming out of Minnesota. If he starts dipping off a little bit, they're still going to have a good year. They'll probably make the playoffs either way, but it's not going to be a situation where they'll step in the playoffs going, oh yeah, they got a real chance to go far here. If they play like this, they have a chance to go far in the playoffs, judging out of the NFC.
Yeah. So moving on to the NFC loser, there were a lot to choose from, in my opinion. Could have went either way. Plenty of players to choose from. Plenty of teams to choose from. But my losers are the Dallas Football Cowboys.
Oh!
Because they look terrible against the Buccaneers. And your starting quarterback got injured, who has been one of the better passers in the league the last few seasons in just sheer yardage. And with Ezekiel Elliott being extremely inconsistent and not having Michael Gallup to draw the defensive coverage away from CeeDee Lamb's routes inside of the field, I just do not, and with their offensive line injuries now, I mean, they happened before the season, I just don't see how the Cowboys are going to be able to play consistently well throughout this time that they're missing Dak. Their backup quarterback is Cooper Rush, who's not good. If Zeke doesn't have an O-line to block, I think Zeke is very good when he has a healthy O-line blocking for him. And we've seen this Cowboys O-line now. They've lost very good starters to injury, trade/free agency, and now I believe their only good starter on the O-line left is Zach Martin. Yeah. Zach Martin. He's the only one left. And he's a guard, so he can only block.
And he's Dak's blindside, I believe, too. So
yeah, so I mean, I just don't see how the Cowboys are going to be able to bounce back from this multi-level issue that they're going to have for the next few weeks. So that the Cowboys are my loser. I thought about going with the Falcons for yet again choking another win that was in their hands, but I ultimately decided that after this Week 1 conclusion, the Cowboys are worse off because the Falcons didn't lose anybody. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. The Falcons are a little bit of a loser in a way, I guess you could say, for the choke job, but they did play well. I thought the Falcons played well. Cowboys, I wouldn't pick them to be losers specifically off of their play. It was bad, but it wasn't something that I would pick them to be the losers for, I guess. But given the circumstances in which they are now put in, I definitely agree with you that they are one of the losers coming out of the NFC. You have no protection on Cooper Rush's blindside. Cooper Rush hasn't even played a full season of NFL football in his career. If you look at his games played, they don't even equal up to 16 weeks of football.
Yeah.
So you're throwing him into the mix with CeeDee Lamb and Ezekiel Elliott and no line. Not going to end good. Dalton Schultz is still there, but hard to believe that they're going to get either one of him or CeeDee Lamb involved too much with a guy like that. So, I do like your pick for loser. I think it's a safe pick. My pick for losers in the NFC is a little different. San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, obviously you had no George Kittle, but this is still a team that has a decent defense that we talked about. They have a decent offense, especially considering other NFC teams. You got a great player in Deebo Samuel, not to mention you got not a bad running back room. You have George Kittle, who, granted, I know didn't play. Trey Lance is supposed to be a good young quarterback coming into the league. And you also have Brandon Ayuk, who's a good receiver, who I think gets overlooked a lot. And you came out against the Bears, and I'm not going to pretend that the Bears are a bad team or anything. The Bears are a good team. But you came out against the Bears in the season opener, and you just looked lost. You looked disconnected. You looked unorganized. You didn't have any communication that was working that night. Their line didn't look good. Their secondary was playing pretty rough, even considering the conditions and all that. You lose a running back, too, now in this game. George Kittle is out. Who knows if he plays next week? I assume he should, considering it's not a serious groin injury. But they're in a tough spot right now, I think. And, they still got Jimmy G, but I don't think Jimmy G is going to play any games. I think that they're putting their all into Trey Lance, and they're kind of just waiting on, Jimmy G to either leave by free agency or some team to finally give in and call before trade deadline and be like, oh, we're desperate. We'll give you a 5th-round pick for this quarterback, which could be Dallas, but we'll see. I don't know. I really don't know what to make of the 49ers off of this week 1 game. I'm going to have to see more on them next week and see how they perform. But to me, they were a big loser in the NFC.
Alrighty, so that concludes our winners and losers for this week. Now we're going to close out with the final segment where Matt and I are going to go through 3 different teams from week 1 that we believe are either in panic mode or riding steady right now. We'll give 3 teams each. I'm going to primarily, this week, I'm going to let Matt lead this one, and I'll chime in on whether I agree or disagree, and then debate why. But this is going to be the last segment of the episode. So yeah, let's get into that then.
Right, yeah, so I'm going to start off with panic mode. We're just going to get the bad and ugly out of the way now. Team number 1, and I might get a little flack for this one, the Cincinnati Bengals. I think they should be in panic mode right now. You are a team that was 1 win away from winning the Super Bowl. And I understand they really didn't necessarily belong there last year. They kind of got a little bit lucky, all this and that. But you were riding pretty high on Joe Burrow. Your defense isn't great. Jamar Chase is a great receiver. You do have a good running back in Joe Mixon. You also got T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd in your receiver room. You should be a team that comes out in week 1, and they should have dropped the hammer in that game, and they didn't. They fell apart. They looked bad all around. I know Joe Burrow threw the ball a lot, and he still ended up having close to 300 yards. I don't know if he cracked it or not, but he was around there. But you threw 4 interceptions. I'm sorry. I cannot excuse that in that game. The Bengals got a lot to clean up before they can come back and start riding that wave high again. And I think that they should be in panic mode. Now, this isn't something where I say panic mode all season or panic mode on the expectations for the year. This is just strictly off of week 1. You should be in panic mode right now. Zach Taylor should be focusing on getting his team back organized, and the Bengals got to play better heading into next week.
Yeah, so I do agree. I'm going to slightly disagree with the panic mode just because if Joe Burrow doesn't throw the interceptions, this is a blowout just based off the stats. And so
right.
I think this does become a legitimate worrisome event if the Bengals have another similar performance in the next couple weeks. If this happens in back-to-back weeks, or say they go out and play decent next week, and then this happens again in week 3, then the Bengals 100% need to figure out what's going on because Joe Burrow is way too good of a quarterback to where he's putting up stats like this and still like looking kind of decent based off of the score line. Like his stat line looks fantastic if he doesn't throw. If he throws even one pick instead of 4, his stat line looks great for this game. So, I mean, it's all still there for the Bengals, which is nice. They've even, in some ways, improved rather than gotten worse from last year. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm only going to slightly disagree just because the Bengals are fine as long as they dial down the turnovers. But I do still completely see your point as this was a terrible performance from the Bengals, who were one of the best teams last year.
Right, and the reason I say panic mode too is, this was a divisional matchup. You had the game at home. This is the season opener coming off a Super Bowl loss. You got a lot to prove. Joe Burrow's still young, but he is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Due for an extension, by the way, after this season. So, they're going to definitely pull the tape on this when it comes time for contract negotiations. That's why I think they should be in panic mode right now. I definitely see your point of it's got to be a continuous week-to-week thing. But, I just have them on here this week for that purpose. I mean, this was a bad showing by the Bengals all around.
Yeah.
The second team I have in this, Dallas Cowboys, I think you'll agree with it.
Completely agree.
It's going to be panic mode no matter what you do. First off, you didn't play good when Dak Prescott was in the game. I understand it's the Bucs D. The Bucs D is great. I get it. But you didn't play good. It was an uneventful game. You really only had a couple of chunk plays. And you lost your quarterback now. You're down to 2 players on your team left on offense. Your offensive line is getting diminished. Your defense really wasn't showing up in this game, who was arguably a good defense last year. They had one of the best corners in interceptions in Trayvon Diggs, and he was quiet last night.
Right.
The only bright spot they really had in that whole game was Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
And, if the Buccaneers' O-line plays like that, it's going to be a bad season for Tom Brady. But, again, it's Micah Parsons, guy who was Defensive Player of the Year or Defensive Rookie of the Year, second in voting in Defensive Player of the Year. So, I mean, you got a great piece in him, but other than that, I don't see how this works out for the Cowboys within the next at least 6 weeks. It could definitely be longer, and you can't afford to lose a quarterback in for 6 weeks or longer in the NFL. It just doesn't work out for teams. So
Agreed.
I think they're definitely going to be in panic mode. They might be calling teams looking for quarterbacks right now, and it's going to get ugly in Dallas for sure.
Yeah.
If you have nothing to argue on that one, I'm going to go on my last one.
Nope, completely agree with that one.
Okay. Panic mode, this one's going to probably throw you off a little bit. Pittsburgh Steelers. They do have a great defense. Their defense are the reason they won that game. The reason I have them here in panic mode, despite Mitchell Trubisky playing decent, you got Najee Harris who went down. He really didn't play well in that game, I thought.
Let me go check the stats real quick.
Chase Claypool was meh at best.
Chase Claypool finished as their top rusher with 36 rushing yards. Najee Harris had 23.
Right. So he didn't play good. Claypool really wasn't great. Who's their other receiver again? That was
Deontay Johnson. He finished with 55 yards, 7 catches. So an all right day from him. But Freiermuth was their top target, 5 for 75.
Yeah. See, Trubisky, you can't put a lot of expectation on Mitch Trubisky. I get that. But the Steelers should be playing pretty good when you get 5 turnovers. And the fact that you had to go to overtime and you got lucky off of the Bengals, you blocked a kick. Your defense did the job to send it to overtime. Then the Bengals missed a kick. Then you have a chance. You miss the kick. Then the Bengals miss the Bengals then miss another opportunity in overtime, and you finally, with like a minute left in overtime, you finally sink the score that wins. I understand this was an ugly game on both teams, but for the Steelers to come away with the win, you shouldn't be riding in the next week on any type of high. You should be riding in the next week going, look, our defense was stellar, probably the best defense in the NFL, and our offense still couldn't capitalize. We got a lot to improve on here. So I think that I put them in the panic mode more or less because, and I got faith in Mike Tomlin that he's going to kind of rein this in, but you can't let a win like that go to your head. It was an ugly, scrappy win that you got to just look at the stat sheet and go, you know what? Divisional win. We got it. It was ugly. Now time to move on. We're focusing on next week right here and now. So those are my three teams in the panic mode. I don't know how you feel about the Steelers, but
yeah, I mean, from a point of view of how bad that game was, 100% the panic, like both offenses just were not looking good. Defense, I still think, I mean, to be honest, we didn't expect. Remember when the Steelers went 11-0 and then ended up losing every game out of that season? Their defense carried them through that season, and every time we were saying, "Oh, their defense can't keep it up for one more week," they actually could keep it up for one more week until the playoffs when they ultimately did get burnt out. But we've shown that no matter how many downs or minutes that this defense plays, they are going to be resilient throughout the entire regular season. So I don't think they have anything really to worry about defensively. Again, it was a bad game. I mean, Minkah Fitzpatrick had a fantastic game. He was really the only good player on the defensive side of the ball. T.J. Watt was all right. He was being disruptive during the game, and Cam Hayward is just going to be a big body to plug up the middle and maybe get through. But I mean,
right.
The in my opinion, at least to agree with you, the panic mode definitely comes from the offense, and they just need to hope that all their guys are able to be healthy so that they can execute the way that they want to efficiently. So that way they don't have to worry about these crappy little finishes to games like they just experienced.
Well, another piece of that panic too, and it's not something that they are going to panic over, but it's definitely going to create worrisome, is your defense played so well that game because the Bengals O-line isn't good. And T.J. Watt was getting back there. He was being disruptive. And when they're worried about T.J. Watt, that then opens the door for Hayward to come in and create pressure as well. So now you lose T.J. Watt in that mix. It's going to kind of close the door a little bit for Hayward. That defensive line isn't going to be as strong. You're not going to get as good quarterback pressure, which helps your secondary as well, too, because then that forces the quarterback into bad decisions, things like that. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a ding in the Steelers' defense for sure. So I think that, there are some concerns to be worried about if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers. Heading into relax mode, though, we're going to change it up and finish out the episode here. First team up, I don't think you're going to disagree with this much, Kansas City Chiefs. Easily, hands down, dominating performance over the Arizona Cardinals. No reason to be worried about anything at all. Their defense played well. The offense played well. Patrick Mahomes was extremely efficient. One of the highest totals on the day for a quarterback. Just nothing wrong. Another piece that actually looked good in that game, too. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Looks like he might be taking another step in the right direction, which is unfortunate for people that don't like the Chiefs. But if you're a Chiefs fan, that's good news for you. So I thought they played well. I don't know if you have any disagreements there.
With the Chiefs, no. I mean, everyone up until week 1 here was like, how are the Chiefs going to be without Tyreek, like you mentioned earlier? And the Chiefs proved that it's more of are the Chiefs ever going to be fine if Travis Kelce leaves? Because the Chiefs were clearly very fine with Tyreek Hill.
Well, I don't know if I would say it's Travis Kelce specifically. It definitely is a big part, Travis Kelce, but I think it has to do with a 3-point combination, right? You got the best quarterback in the game right now. And yes, as much as I want to say Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the game right now, it's so hard to pick a best quarterback. I think it's a tie between Mahomes and Allen, but I do give Mahomes that edge because he's got the MVP. He's got the Super Bowl. Yeah. You got to give it to the guy. He's athletic and he can make throws that nobody else can. Yeah. Just like Allen can make throws, he can. But Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. You got the best tight end in the game in Travis Kelce, who can't be guarded by anybody. I haven't seen good coverage. I haven't seen good coverage on Travis Kelce in years. I'm sorry.
I mean, the only way you're going to stop him, maybe, is putting your best corner on him, and then that's just going to open up so many other opportunities for other people.
Well, you got to double team him with your best two corners, and then you're leaving somebody open. That's how the Chiefs beat you. But it's also Andy Reid. Andy Reid is a offensive mastermind. His play calling is just ridiculous, out of this world, and it fits with Mahomes and Kelce's style, and that's what makes the Chiefs so good. So they're definitely going to be in relax mode, I think. Second team up on this, you might disagree with these next two teams, but I got the Washington Commanders.
Okay.
I got the Washington Commanders.
Okay, I don't know if I'll disagree, but I definitely didn't have them in my mind. I got two teams in my mind right now.
Also, just to add, I just did see a notification. Jamal Adams is being carted to the locker room in the Seahawks-Broncos game.
Yeah,
so that's
I didn't know if you wanted me to give you any updates. Geno Smith already has over 100 yards, and the Seahawks are up 7-3.
Oh, God.
Russell Wilson is also passing efficiently. They just scored a field goal instead of a touchdown on their first drive.
Okay. Well,
but Seahawks are also in the red zone. So.
All right. Yeah, we'll get this wrapped up so we can get to the game. But we just want to let everybody know that Jamal Adams is now out too, as well. He's being carted, so it's obviously going to be a serious injury. But back to what I was saying, the Commanders, to me, they're in relax mode. They're a team that doesn't have expectations. Carson Wentz, in my mind, played exceptionally well in this game. You saw Terry McLaurin doing his Terry McLaurin thing. Antonio Gibson looked really good, both rushing and receiving for the type of running back that he is. The defense obviously was phenomenal coming out of the Commanders. I thought they played great. Like, you can't ask for a defense to play better. They had the picks, they had the sacks and the quarterback pressure. They were really good with tackling right away. And then you had, on the offensive side of the football, back to what I was saying, Jahan Dotson showed out in his first game, and I think he's going to be a bigger piece than people think. I mean, he's a really athletic, big receiver. That's going to be good for Carson Wentz, because the one thing about Carson Wentz, right, now that Terry McLaurin's your one, he's going to be able to run a little bit more of slants. He's going to be able to do inside and out routes, post routes, things like that. Whereas Jahan Dotson could be your deep threat. And Carson Wentz, even though he's not the best quarterback in the league, and he's probably going to miss on a lot of these, like I'd say like 50-50, he can air it out. And if Jahan Dotson's down there, you better believe that he's going to end up making a play at some point.
Yeah,
so,
and I mean, to even elaborate on that point too, Terry McLaurin is also a deep threat. So if you want to switch those roles there and let Jahan Dotson maybe operate out of the slot and keep him down low, well, if he's having a monster game, well, you still have to worry about Scary Terry. And if he runs a single coverage go route, we have seen him countless times make catches that should not have been caught one-on-one against DBs. So I think Washington, like you said earlier, they just have a fun team to watch this year. And it's going to be exciting to see how they do.
It's entertaining football, at the very least, And I'm excited to see when the rookie running back comes back, how he performs, because he's got some high expectations on him. He looked really good in camp, they said. So I think it's going to open up the door for Gibson and McKissick to be more receiving backs for sure. But also, a lot of people forget, too, Curtis Samuel's in the slot there. Yep. And Curtis Samuel's a really good receiver. So I think this is just a fun wide receiver room to row together. They're going to be together for a long time. They're all young. So, yeah, good young team to watch. I think they're in relax mode heading into week. Last team heading into relax mode in week 2, the New York Giants.
Ooh, okay. I got 3 different picks in my mind right now, and none of them over.
Okay. So. All right. I say the Giants because we talked about it when we covered them. They don't have expectations on them. They just got a good, feel-good win. Their fans are feeling good about their season. Saquon, he ripped off a big run in that game. He looked like old Saquon.
Mm-hmm.
So, if he gets back, it's going to be exciting. I'm really excited about the rookies they drafted, too. I said it when we talked about them, but they did really well in the draft. They had one of the highest grades out of all the NFL teams. I'm excited for what Dayball and Shane are building in New York, and I really do want to root for them, not just because Dayball and Shane are there, but because I am excited about the Giants. Like, the Giants are a team, in my mind at least, and maybe it's a regional thing of like where we grew up, and especially the Jets being in our division, the Giants not. But the Giants have always been an easy team for me to root for. Like when Eli Manning was there and doing well, and Odell Beckham was part of that team, it was like this is fun to watch. Like Eli Manning's fun, OBJ is fun. Like this is an easy team to root for. You can't really hate them. You can't really love them either. They're just like, okay, go Giants.
Yeah,
like
I
I'm
agree.
cool with that. But yeah, I don't think they have anything to worry about. There was no major holes. Like I said, it was a complete team effort in that win. So I think they're going to, not riding high, but they're just kind of going to cruise into week 2 and see what happens.
Yeah. So I know we're both itching to go check out how the game's going right now. So I'll just keep this quick. So my 3 picks, just for the panic mode. Like I said, I agreed with you on the Cowboys. You had the Steelers and the Bengals as well. I kind of agree with the Bengals, but I would sub out the the Steelers for the Patriots. Patriots are definitely also in panic mode. They look horrible and need to figure it out quick, especially if they want to be competitive in this slightly revamped, better-looking AFC East. Yep. And then with my riding steady, I actually decided to go one with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They came out and got a win against a team that I think before week 1, people were thinking the Cowboys would at least give the Bucs a better run for their money than they did. They had all that Tom Brady drama throughout preseason about him going on his fucking family vacation and everyone freaking out thinking, oh, he must have like banged 4 dudes and then said I'm quitting football 4 times. So that was literally nothing more than Tom Brady going on a family vacation to sort out family shit. So I think they can finally relax after all the BS. They've gotten through week 1, put it behind them, played a game, and got the dub. So they're going in there. This one's a bit more controversial. It's more for like single-handed reasons. But the Ravens, just because they got a win, they didn't really look that bad. And the Lamar Jackson contract drama is now going to be pushed to the next offseason. They didn't get it done by the deadline, so now he's just going to have to play football. If he plays a great season, then he's going to get even more money than he's holding out for. So for right now, the Ravens can relax. They just got to hope Lamar keeps doing their thing, and they're going to definitely be a top contender after a slightly down year, I think, last year in the AFC East, or North, sorry.
Yeah.
And then for my third riding steady relax mode, even though they still got the shit to deal with Deshaun Watson, the Cleveland Browns have gotten their week 1 win out of the way with their backup quarterback, answering the questions that were had for the team. They've gotten past the hump with the Panthers. They've still got stuff to work on. They could be better in the air for sure, and their defense could be a little better. But, I mean, Myles Garrett's still going to do his thing. Now, besides all the stuff off the field that you have to deal with Deshaun Watson, you kind of know what you're going to be rolling with now for the next 11 weeks while he's out. And for that reason, I think that's why the Browns can kind of ride steady for right now.
Yeah, the only one I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on is the Browns. I see your point, and I do understand why. And you did mention it. The passing game to me wasn't there, and it was against a average Panthers D. They're not really great. They're not what they used to be. I think that there's some concerns there yet in the passing game, especially not just because of who's playing quarterback, but your receiver room really isn't good.
Yeah.
And they're going to end up relying on Chubb and Hunt again, and you don't want to end up in a situation. The reason Cleveland's run game is so good is because you have 2 very good running backs right now in Chubb and Hunt. You lose one of them, that's really going to put a damper on your season, and I think that that's something that they've always been concerned about. It's happened before. So there are some concerns for me in the way that they played, especially defensively. Things are a little on the
Yeah.
defensive side. So, yeah, and then just really quickly too, I'm going to give you my best quarterback and worst quarterback of the week, and we're not going to get into why or anything. I'm just going to say
Yeah.
my best quarterback in the league this week, Justin Herbert. I thought he was extremely efficient and all that. Played really well. And worst quarterback, Joe Burrow. You got the expectations, you got the bad turnovers and all this and that. So, yeah, so we're hoping to put out an episode later this week. Hopefully aiming for Friday, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if we can get it out before the game on Thursday, that'd be great. But I think for both of us, likely going to look towards the end of the week. So.
Yeah. And we're going to look to continue to, hopefully, like I said earlier, do this throughout the season where we kind of recap the games, maybe on Monday before the Monday night game, and then kind of give the preview expectations on the week ahead when we have time on like a Friday or a Thursday, and do that for 17 weeks, and then we'll get in the playoffs, So,
Yeah. All right, so just a little update then for you real quick before we sign off. My boy in fantasy, Jerry Jeudy, catching a 67-yard touchdown pass from Russell Wilson.
come on,
The
man.
game is now tied at 10, so I'm not gonna hold us in here too much longer. I want to go put this game on because it's looking
I
pretty
got
good.
Cortland Sutton on my team. Come on,
Oh
man.
man, I was about to. Oh fuck, I do have Sutton on one of my other teams. Damn. Oh well. All right. So thanks so much for listening this week. Matt and I look forward to hopefully pumping out weekly episodes now that the NFL season is underway. We're both out of school now, and we really only have to worry about our day shift jobs most of the time. So
Yeah.
so hopefully we'll be getting some weekly episodes out to you guys. Appreciate the support for like the 3 people that actually maybe watch 5 minutes of our episodes. But hey, you gotta start somewhere. So
Yeah.
appreciate the support from anybody. Tell us to your family, tell your friends about us, all that good stuff. Check out our socials. I'm not gonna link them because I'm too lazy. You could go find them somewhere. KQC_podcast. It'll lead you somewhere. But yeah,
We are on Spotify now as well.
yeah. So thank you everyone for checking us out, and we will see you later.